The comfortable view is that everything is good with the Indian judiciary except Charameshwar and Fort. Charameshwar Fort. I'm sure in the gathering of ILU, I'm sure you understand the implication of that expression, Charameshwar. If you recollect, the Ganga Four after Mao's. There is the epithet given to four of us after the January 12th press conference by some very influential journalist. Well, I plead guilty. The gang of four, now it's become a gang of three because one is supposed to have parted company with us. Books have been written that God save this country. This man had an agenda behind. The other three are simply ignored, as if I am the only person who had an agenda and held the press conference. The big lawyers make about ₹1 crore every day. So I would as well say, look here, the most celebrated people, the acknowledged jurists of this country believe that everything is fine with the Indian judiciary and Indian law, Indian constitution, Indian society. And therefore I conclude my speech is one way of doing it. But unfortunately, Mr. Prasad in his introductory remarks said that if I can use that old expression of things perhaps are not that well with things have not worked that well with the Indian judiciary for the last 70 years. I am not saying that it has totally failed. Please don't misunderstand when you speak. But there are areas where there are a lot of desirable things in the functioning of the Indian judiciary. That's my limited point. There are various facets of this institution, various facets of this problem. Obviously, the limited time of 1 hour or 45 minutes, I can only project a few of them. All of us, I don't know, whether really, irrespective of the fact whether you belong to this political party or that political party, lawyers form a class other than the litigant public. The real opinion about anything, about the government or an institution, judiciary, or the administration, is the opinion of the common man in this country. All said and done, we are certainly not common men and women in this country. We are slightly more privileged than millions and millions of common people in this country. What do they feel about the system? How good is it? How user-friendly the legal system of this country is something which you have to gather from them. And by all information I received from various sources in the last almost 50 years of my interaction with the Indian legal system, starting from the days of my law college till today. Well, a good number of people in this country are simply indifferent to it because they have nothing to do with the legal system. They simply don't bother whether Charameshwar is right or XYZ is right. I don't like to choose contemporary names. Whether just Subrao is right or Patanjali Shastri is right. That man, that poor man in the village living in the rural area or even in urban area, most of the time he is not concerned. So he doesn't bother about it. Unless he had the misfortune of getting into some litigation as a civil or criminal somewhere. So the ultimate opinion, if at all, is the opinion of those people who had some litigation in the system. And by all information I receive from my interaction from people, they are not very happy with the system. There are two principal reasons for their unhappiness. One is the inordinate delays in the legal process. Naturally, people feel unhappy. The litigation takes 20 years, 30 years, not necessarily in one court, varying at various levels of the judicial process, appeals, revisions, special leave petitions, so on and so forth. The legal proceedings are interminable. The result is elusive. So therefore, they are not happy. Incidental to this is the efficiency levels of the system. When I talk about the efficiency, I am not talking about the lyrical beauty of the judgments and the orders of the courts. The precision and the quality of the judgments, most of the time, as far as you know, why does the Supreme Court entertain so many petitions? Pendency is some 50,000-60,000. By the time I left the court, it was around 50,000. I haven't taken the latest statistics. Must be something more, because I presume so, because the Supreme Court decided to enhance its strength after my retirement. Obviously, there is more pendency. Why is there so much of pendency? We'll take the highest court, then that explains the lower courts. The general belief is that the quality of adjudication at the high court levels is not up to the level. Therefore, what is this quality? On every Monday and Friday, various benches of the Supreme Court hear about 50-60 bail applications. I don't think B.N. Rao, Baba Saheb and Saral Ladi would have ever thought that one day the Supreme Court will be hearing bail applications. That 136 provision is finally used for hearing bail applications also. But I was mentioning to Mr. Prasad, I was the Chief Justice of 2 high courts for 4.5 years. And I'm sure as lawyers, all of you must be knowing in the High Court, normally bail applications are entrusted to a relatively new entrant. I would not like to use the expression junior judge, because there is another thing which I always hated. Once is a judge, senior, junior, I don't understand this. This is a typical bureaucratic mind. A relatively new entrant. And in the context of the High Court, normally these applications are entrusted to a judge, normally, not necessarily always, entrusted to somebody who is drawn from the service, not directly recruited from the bar. For various reasons it happens, and it's not going to be. But then, once I reached the Supreme Court, after 4.5 years as the Chief Justice, after exercising my powers as the master of the roster of 2 high courts, assigning those bail applications to some relatively new entrant judge, I find sitting in a bench with another senior judge who had been a Chief Justice himself to hear a bail application. It requires two former Chief Justices to hear a bail application which was dismissed or allowed by one learned judge of the High Court. Now, what kind of a system is this? What kind of an efficiency is this? I never understood it. Now, I'll give you one more example known to all of you. Some 30 years back, the Negotiable Instruments Act was amended. Section 138 was introduced, making it a criminal offence for somebody to draw a check which is not honoured. And the idea is that normal civil litigation for recovery of money is taking unduly long time. And especially in the context of money claims based on a check, a banking transaction, should have a more, what is the philosophical justification? We are not concerned with it, it is not a seminar, but this is the background in which that amendment was made. And now what happens in these matters? It goes before the first court, the magistrate, district court, high court, and finally people land up in the Supreme Court. Depending on the spin of the coin on a Monday or Friday, the notice will be ordered in a matter. And in all, making an adjudication of a 138 petition a clean 10 years average. Rent control matter, I can multiply this. See, problem is this long delay in the adjudicatory process makes, I don't know whether the Indian judiciary has really, no, judiciary may not be solely responsible for it. Maybe the other organs of this state are also equally responsible for creating and nurturing this kind of a system. We'll come to it later. But at any rate, the legal system in the last 70 years has not improved its efficiency. One of the last, not the last but one judgment I delivered as a judge in this country, I'm sure some of you might have read it. It's a matter from Gujarat. The incident took place in 1989. Some remote small town of Gujarat. The incident left 3 dead bodies and 5 or 6 injured people. And by the time the matter was heard by me, I was on the verge of my retirement, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks before my factual retirement. Technically, it was some 7-8 weeks because I retired during vacation. So, 89 to 2018, almost 30 years, with 3 people dead and 5 people injured. 17 accused were there. I would request my lawyer friends to read that judgment. It is a demonstration of what is all wrong with our criminal justice administration system. Just to tell you, a one-line charge, as I could read from the Sessions Court judgment and the High Court judgment, that all you 17 people are accused of offences under 302, 307, 324, 326, 143, 144, 147, 148, so on and so forth. But at least those of my friends who are practicing on criminal law should know that a charge is required to be precise in criminal law. You make an omnibus charge like this against 17 people, that itself is a great problem in the administration of justice. Now, there is a charge of 143, unlawful assembly. There are 17 people. No finding is recorded whether there was an unlawful assembly or not, because to establish an unlawful assembly, it's not only the number, a certain mental state is to be established. No inquiry was there, no finding is recorded. If an unlawful assembly is established, certain consequences would follow under 149, constructive liability and so on. With all this, 17 people were put to trial. 2 were found guilty of 302. And 3 other people were found of lesser offences, 323, 326, so on and so forth. And the conviction of these 2 people under 302 is once again omnibus. You are found guilty of 302. Guilty of killing whom? There are 3 dead bodies. The judgment is required to be a little more precise. Why little more? To be precise. That is the essence of all criminal jurisprudence. Whose death did they cause? We'll assume, though there is no room for assumptions in criminal law, we'll assume that all 3 people, all two people are guilty for the death of all the 3. Then 3 separate convictions on the count of each one of the deaths must be recorded. Nothing was decided. 2 of them were found guilty of 302. And by the time the appeals came to be heard by the Supreme Court, with all these defects, those 2 served their sentence. Maybe they were guilty of killing 1 of them or 3 of them, I don't know. That's not the point. We are talking about the legal system. And if there are 2 dead bodies and if there is an unlawful assembly, probably, depending upon the appropriate evidence, some more people could have been convicted in 149 because there was an appeal by the victims and their families. Obviously, in the absence of a finding, nothing could be done in the matter. This is the level of efficiency with which, and this is only one example, I am not saying this is the only case. If you look at the averages, the kind of adjudicative process in this country, I am sure each one of you must have come across something like this. Naturally, people will not be very happy with this system. On the other hand, the Supreme Court, let us say, in this country sits in division benches, which itself contributes to a great deal of uncertainty in law. We have reached a stage when judgments are valid only for that day and for that bench. I'll give you just two examples to you. A question whether a mineral, it's a little technical, forgive me, whether mineral rights, an impost on mineral rights is a tax or fee is plaguing this country for the last almost 60 years. There are at least 7 constitution benches on this question. The matter is still pending before a larger bench of 9 judges. I don't know when that bench is going to be constituted. Reference was made 10 years before I went to the Supreme Court. The reference was made. No bench is constituted as yet. Why is it happening? Because of the division benches. Anybody who reaches the Supreme Court has a view and he takes a view, but then unfortunately the precedents are not strictly adhered to. Therefore, every new judgment gives scope for a further dispute. Thing goes on like this. This tells greatly on the efficiency of the system. Now, there was a case where persons with disability, there was a gentleman who had some visual impairment. He got into the service of the Prasar Bharati. At the recruitment level, there was a reservation in favor of persons with disability. He got in. A few years later, he was due for promotion. The next level post to which he is aspiring to be promoted is a post under the rules of Prasar Bharati is to be filled up partly by direct recruitment and partly by promotion from the lower categories. The rules provide that in the context of direct recruitment to the higher posts, reservation is still there, but in the context of promotion from the lower post, that 50% from the lower post, no reservation is provided. It was challenged. I found it was an unjust rule, having errored. I don't want to go, I'm not defending my judgment, that's not the point. After the judgment was delivered, I said, therefore, the rule is untenable. Within a month thereafter, another division bench took a different view. No, on some principle. I am not saying whether I am right or the other bench is right. I am only talking about the problem. Then a third bench makes a reference to a larger bench. Just about a month back, I read it in the newspaper that the larger bench took a view which I took earlier. The point is this, whether I am right or the other learned judges are right is not the question. This kind of uncertainty is not conducive for the efficient functioning of the system. And most of this problem starts because of division benches in the Supreme Court. How to handle this? Well, it's a matter of big debate. We keep on expanding the strength of the Supreme Court, then we end up with more division benches. And I suspect, before I end my journey on this planet, I think I may say a Supreme Court with 100 judges. Then what happens thereafter, well, I leave it to you to imagine. On the contrary, look at, there have been great judgments. Every country is bound to happen. In fact, if some of my friends must have read, there is a famous book by a man called Bernard Squartz. The book is titled A Book of Lists. It says something like this: 10 great judges of the book, all in the context of the American Supreme Court. Maybe if that kind of a book is published in India, what would happen to the author, I don't know. He said 10 great judges of the Supreme Court, 10 worst judges of the Supreme Court, 10 great Chief Justices, 10 worst Chief Justices, 10 might have beens, 10 great judgments, 10 worst judgments. You know, this kind of a description goes on in this thing. Now, we come to the other aspect of the matter. There have been great judges. They have laid down great principles of jurisprudence, great law. But at the same time, The fact, ground reality remains today. Elections take place once in 5 years. Election petitions are to be heard exclusively by the high courts, at least from 1965. Prior to that, there used to be election tribunals and so on. Let's not go into it right now. For the last 40, 50 years, by the high courts. And the Representation of the People Act stipulates that election petition should be decided in 6 months. If there is anybody in this gathering who has heard of an election petition which was decided within 6 months, if you can raise your hands, I'll be very happy.
Not even within 6 years. Not even within 6 years.
Now, there is one case, one second, I'll come to that case. The system, neither the Supreme Court nor any High Court or any Chief Justice, nobody ever thought of creating some process by which this is expedited. Election petitions are distributed at random among the judges, and then they take their own sweet time. Without meaning any disrespect, most of the time, or at least sometime, election petitions are allotted to judges who never argued a election. I'm not saying election law is the only law, I'm giving examples. And then they start learning the law or not learning the law with that case. Matter goes on and on and on. This is the mandate. Naturally, the political establishment will be very happy with this kind of a situation. They don't raise a little finger about it. And the enthusiasm with which the Supreme Court asserted the authority of the Chief Justice to be the master of the roster. My understanding is that a power is required to be exercised to make an assessment like this. Which judge would be better suited to hear a case like this? Not playing favorites and so on and so forth. You start distributing the memorandum and then the matters, and when they come to you see some of these things, they're hilarious to read. But then the process goes on. Now, everybody talks about criminalization of politics, the political process. And what happens when somebody who is accused of some criminal activity in public life, the cases go on interminably. And I don't have to, perhaps I might get into a controversy in Tamil Nadu if I make this statement. From your own state, forget about whatever happened. After hearing a particular case of a particular politician, the highest court couldn't deliver the judgment for 8 long months after it was reserved. 8 long months after the judgment was reserved. Either way, it is wrong. If that particular accused is innocent, the person had suffered a great damage to the reputation. If that accused is guilty, the accused escaped punishment. Either way, looked at either way, this kind of a protraction is something which is antithetical to the whole democratic and constitutional process. Then nobody talks about it. These big lawyers, one-crore lawyers who have opinion to express about many things, never open their mouths on these matters. Now, there is a provision. All of us abhor politics without principle, starting from the father of the nation. Nonetheless, you know what happens in this country. At some stage, the Indian Parliament, maybe in some weak moment, thought that this kind of unprincipled politics is to be curbed. An amendment was made to the Constitution of India. A schedule was added, 10th schedule. And you know the implications of the 10th schedule, defection is not permissible, barring certain circumstances and so on and so forth. Speaker is made the authority to determine whether there is a defection or not. And more often, of course I am a very unfortunate fellow in this country, when I decided that case, when I wrote the dissenting judgment, I don't know, Mr. Prasad, will perhaps hold the view that my view was right. But quite a lot of people believed that my judgment was meant to please the powers that are functioning in Delhi. A lot of people believed it. Perhaps even they believed it, those who are in power. And a year later, when I raised my dissent about the non-elevation of one judge, Justice K.M. Joseph, the powers in Delhi thought that I'm an anti-national. There's a lot of epithets nowadays: anti-national, anti-this, anti-that, so on and so forth. Point is, I was not unaware of the fact if the power to make appointments is handed over completely to the executive, what would happen is not unknown to me. Now, even with that long 1,000-page judgment asserting very vociferously about the independence of the judiciary, in the last 4 years after the judgment, what is happening in this country? Recommendations made by the Collegium of the Supreme Court, High Court, and confirmed by the Supreme Court are cleared selectively by the government. Whatever the government wants to clear, they clear it. Others, they simply don't clear it. Here, I must say something. In all fairness to the government, it is not the political party. This has been the practice of all governments, irrespective of the political party. The previous governments are also doing, this government is also doing. The future government also will. Even Mr. N.J. Prasad becomes the Prime Minister, I think he will also continue the same process. It's only the change of the name. The hardware changes, the software is the same for all the political parties. They follow the same pattern. Now, I never said in the NJSC judgment, please hand over the power to the government. Unfortunately, that seems to be understanding of some of our friends in this country that when I dissented, I was in favor of handing over. No, I didn't say it. I said this is the system of exclusive authority of the collegium has failed, in my view. I gave reasons in the judgment why I believed so. I may be right or wrong, it's for you to assess. We are all lawyers, make an assessment who is right or wrong. So therefore, an alternative mode. What is the system of NJSC? In a body of 6, 3 judges of the Supreme Court are still there, constitute a single largest block. 2 eminent persons who are there, and 1 law minister. So any 2 judges, determined judges of the 3, can stop a bad appointment, because 2 black balls, nobody can be appointed. Any 2 could. The question is, none of them will be able to get people of their choice unless all 6 of them agree upon some bargain. You take half, I take half, and we get along with it. This kind of bargains are always possible in politics. I never said hand it over to the government, as sort of interpreted at some quarters. It is an experiment worth trying, because we have experienced for 30 years the functioning of the collegium system. So therefore, if the government, the Constituent Assembly, by a unanimous vote, is introducing an amendment seeking to project an alternative process of the selection of the members of the Constitutional Judiciary in this country, I thought it's a matter to be worth experimenting with due respect. Now, it was declared unconstitutional. What's happening thereafter? I'll just give you one example. One thing you will know to perhaps the whole country is Justice K.M. Joseph's elevation, what all had happened in the newspaper, when appeared in the newspaper. There's one case I'll tell you. There is a officer in your neighboring state, Karnataka. His name was cleared by the Supreme Court Collegium thrice so far. 3 times the Supreme Court Collegium reiterated. The appointment is yet to come, not yet come. I doubt very much whether it will come. Now, when all these things are happening, there's one more thing I will mention. There is this wonderful judgment of the Supreme Court about the Chief Justice being the master of the roster. Yes, he is the master of the roster, no doubt about it. Even I enjoyed that, I exercised that power for 4.5 years at a high court level, not at the Supreme Court level. In the last 5 years, or 4 years, three Chief Justices, and it is not only my words, I stand by this, but not only my words. A legal scholar, Gautam Bhatia, wrote an article. They acted in utter violation of the principles of natural justice of being judges in their own cause. I don't want to elaborate it. All of you know who they are and what was the context in which such a thing happened. 3 successive Chief Justices. They said, it is the power as the master of the roster I exercise. When there is an accusation against them, they exercise the power. If any lesser mortal were to resort to this kind of a power, you know what happens, how wonderful judgments are written about the principles of natural justice. We have acres and acres of those judgments in this country. When it came to this, 3 of them simply ignored that principle. If there is a conflict between that principle and the master of the roster principle, which should prevail over the other is for you to decide. Now, okay, you're all, sorry to say, I don't mean any disrespect, you're all high court level lawyers. The very big lawyers in the Supreme Court. They are the nation's leaders of the legal profession. They make tons of money, they are still making tons of money. Nobody ever opened their mouth about it. They never took a stand. On the other hand, when I said things are going wrong here, everybody had, these people, had an opinion about my press conference, my not attending the collegium meeting. Well, people advised me to resign and talk. When Rumapal spoke after retirement, said, why didn't you say it when you were in office? That was once again an argument. You know, we're all lawyers, we can argue on either side depending upon who is paying us and whose cause we are espousing. When Rumapal spoke about it after retirement, the objection is, why did you not say it when you were in office? Whereas said it in office, why are you saying it, resign first and then talk about it? This is the legal system. Now, my dear friends, this is not to say that things are absolutely bad. I still believe for a healthy democracy to function and survive, an honest, independent, efficient legal system is essential. Without that, no democracy can function. Question is, do we have such a system or is it faltering? If it is faltering, how to rectify it? And what is the role of the bar in this? Please remember, judges do not descend from heavens. All of us went from the bar. All of us went from this society, good or bad of us. Now, it is the bar which ultimately creates or destroys the legal system. Apart from the youngsters, those who are of my age and older than me, would recollect there was a phase in this country in 75, 76, something called emergency. Judges were transferred, a lot of things happened. There was a huge uproar, debate about an assault of the independence of the judiciary. And at that stage, there was an emergency in operation, fundamental rights were suspended technically, so on and so forth. Today, there is no emergency. There is no suspension of fundamental rights. What is the Indian bar doing? How many of us are willing to stand up and... Now, another problem is, a lot of us, quite a large number of us, are very free to express opinions about each one of these matters in private. But most of us are not willing to express an opinion about it in public. That is the problem with the Indian bar. And it is not a problem only of the bar, it is a problem of Indian society. About 20 years back, a wonderful book was written by somebody who lived in Madras, of course. Forgive me, it's an old habit. By the time I was studying here, it was Madras. It's become Chennai later. It's an old habit. Somebody who lived in Chennai passed away a couple of years ago, Abraham Rally, he wrote a fantastic book on Mughal history titled The Last Spring. I'm sure some of you would have read it. For the benefit of those who have not read it, please read it. Fantastic book. The book is in two parts. First half is the story. Those 6 Grand Mughals, Babur to Aurangzeb. Well, the question is, if I call them Grand Mughals, I might get into trouble today. That's another problem. Forget it. But anyway, the fact remains that their lives and times, how many wives, how many horses, how many elephants, how many wars, how many people died, how much of money spent, so on and so forth, is the first part of the book. The second half of the book deals with an analysis of the Mughal society, the social, political, and economic aspects of the Mughal society. After all that analysis, in the epilogue, Erali says, hypocrisy and psychopathy are the hallmarks of Mughal ruling classes. They seldom spoke openly. They communicated in nods and confabulations, which made it easy for them to break faith and still feel decent about it. 500 years later, Indian society is not much different. If you really want democracy to survive, if you want to live in a democratic society, let us make an effort to get rid of this habit of this having a private opinion, having a different public opinion. Unless we get rid of this habit, democracies will not survive. And democracies and liberties do not belong to timid and weak. Those who are willing to stand up and assert and fight for their rights, only then democracy survives. I think I've taken enough of your time, my dear friends, but of course I can go on and on like this, but then time is a constraint. I'm grateful for this wonderful opportunity because it's always been a pleasure for me to come to Chennai. Nostalgia. When I was passing through the streets of afternoon when I keep coming. But every time I come here, I feel very, very happy because I'm reminded of my youth. I'm very grateful for this opportunity and also for the patient hearing. Thank you all.